Yeah, thanks for the opportunity to present here and to show some of the output of my PhD project at TU Delft. I want to especially thank my supervisor, Professor Tatiana Filatova, and the other co-authors as well. Just to provide a little bit of context, the idea is that coastal areas have been attractive for economic development for different reasons, such as economic advantages in trade and richness of amenities. And so they are areas with a high concentration of economic activities and population. However, with a changing climate, these areas are also more exposed to climate-induced hazards such as sea level rise and flooding. So the idea is, how can we build climate resilient? How can we enhance resilience of these areas? Of course, to appropriate policy making, we need tools that are able to compare damages and benefit of different policies, and hence accurate damage assessments are crucial. However, the current tool employed in policy making face several limits. But at the same time, there has been a huge progress in behavior and computational science that provide us tools to study the model from a different angle, such as the employment of agent-based model. So in our review, we show that the traditional previous risk, the approach to risk was like this gray part, where like it was study has the ability of the system to absorb and cope from a specific event, and then how the risk was changing through a static view of hazard exposure and vulnerability. The main value added of agent-based model has been including this learn adapt cycle, because of their, of course, inner ability to have multiple heterogeneous actors which can interact through multiple channels. This interaction gather information, then affect their decision making, and then their individual action can make like a dynamic change of the risk, which whose level comes back to the agent as feedback. You can see, for instance, there is a clear okay, here we divided them into categories, but in general, these are all agent-based models that study flood risk, and you can see there is a clear uprising trend, and especially you can see that they also have started to include more actors, from households to including government, insurer, developer, and so on. And of course, these actors brings different action, learning, interaction, and so on. However, what we also notice is that there are still some things very important that are missing. One is firms. Firms are used to the empirical measurement of resilience. They are always important because they provide households with jobs and income, and they are never modeled in this stream of literature. And they also usually limit the analysis to the direct damages. So we have these direct damages, but then what these direct damages mean for the society, how these risks are distributed among actors, and are there any like tipping point and threshold to the system change state that like has been discussed extensively yesterday. So to sort of reduce the gap in this direction, we came from a different perspective, and we built the climate economy regional agent-based model, which is an evolutionary agent-based model, and in this basic form is made by two regions. One, that it's supposed to, a coastal region, which is supposed to mimic this coastal region, which has a high volume of trade with the rest of the world, but also exposed to climate hazards, and as more safe inland region, but with less competitive advantage in trade. The regions are populated by three classes of agents, two sector of firms, one which is more like it covers the innovation and machineries product, while the others, it produces the goods that are sold to households. Each region has one-to-one a labor market, so all agents can work only in the regions where they live, but they can buy and sell goods from between the two regions, paying a transport cost, and they can also migrate between the region. I won't discuss I'm happy to discuss later with anyone who's interested the equation and the specification of the model because it's quite heavy. But for the sake of time, I will move directly to the results. So in a first phase, we try to see, we muted the climate shocks and we try to see if our model is indeed able to reproduce this agglomeration process in coastal areas. And indeed, it eventually did. Basically, the process here is that the coastal area has more trade with the rest of the world, so it has more resources. So it means that the businesses invest more, and by investing more, they are more likely to discover better and more productive technology. This more productive technology creates better and more jobs opportunity, which are factors that triggers households and migration. So the population of this area increases. And once the population of area increases, it becomes also a bigger and more profitable market for firms, which follows, and they also increase. Of course, this process is endogenous, all in the model, thanks to innovation. And yeah, and mimic this sort of agglomeration process happening in coastal areas because of specific spatial advantages, not because they start with different conditions. In a second exercise, we include climate shocks, and our aim was to see, okay, we have this agglomeration process, then how shock of different severity and probability might affect it, or what is the interplay between them. And we tested different climate scenarios, ranging from high probability, ranging from high and low probability and severity. And we have two main important results, which are the positive against the negative consequences of flooding. So the positive is that when firms are like part of the assets is destroyed by the flood, they have to buy it back like new machines. These new machines are usually newer technology, so they are more productive and they might bring economic benefit in the long term. However, firms are financial constrained. They cannot just keep buying back new machinery all the time there is a flood. So once they don't have any more resources to buy them, they cannot produce as much as they want. They have to downgrade the production, fire workers, this increase the unemployment, and there are like ripple effect in the system. The second important result is then the role of a timely coastal retreat to avoid the lock-in. Basically, these two effects can be shown in the purple against the green line in this figure. So you can see that, for instance, in the purple, where we have a first half of the simulation, which the climate is stable, and the second half, we assume a climate tipping point where hazards become more frequent and more severe. You can see we have an agglomeration process, and then part of households once the climate change might to escape. But for firms, they remain trapped and looking in the region because they sort of lack the resources and the economic incentive to live. And this brings a huge economic turmoil in the whole economy. Conversely, if we have very, and also counterintuitively, if we have very bad flood condition, like frequent and severe floods since the beginning, all the population leave the region before the agglomeration process triggers. And there are, of course, some downturn at the beginning, but then the creative destruction, since they rebuilt with like sort of the best technology on the market, they bounce back and eventually they experience a sort of an economic trajectory that is similar to the world without flooding. Of course, this is not to say that an economic retreat is always uneasy and the way to go, but because we are not considering like social cost and other challenges it presents, like planning and so on, but we show that it might be possible in case economic interests of firms and households are aligned. And this was, of course, like a first step towards a more, first theoretical perspective. And we are now moving it towards like more realistic case study that includes more economic sector on-site climate change adaptation and other things. So thank you for the attention.